The Acolyte is the newest Star Wars project that has been released, and I think the relentless hate that it has received from so many people is unfair to the show and how good, in my opinion, it has been so far. I get that the director, Leslie Headland, has made some questionable comments about George Lucas and Star Wars in general, but I always think it is better to take what people say with a grain of salt and see the final result, and so far I am liking that result. I think this show is a smart approach for Lucasfilm, consisting almost completely of original characters, planets, and the time period itself. This makes the story more interesting because nobody knows what happens to these new characters, which adds to the suspense of the show. This show kind of reminds me of Andor with its originality, and I like it for that. Not everything in Star Wars needs to revolve around fan service and characters who we already know inside and out. I'm not saying that Lucasfilm should stop making projects with legacy characters, I'm just saying that it is nice when we are introduced to fresh new concepts in Star Wars. Episode 1 satisfies the Star Wars itch I've been craving recently, bringing in so many Star Wars aspects and making Star Wars feel mysterious again. We start on a new and interesting looking planet called Ueda. We see May walk into an alien noodle cafe, and there are so many aliens in this episode, most being species I've never seen or heard of before, and their costume design is stunningly good too. All of these new species of aliens add to the show's mysteriousness. Mystery is what makes Star Wars, well, Star Wars, and this show does this so well. The choreography is well done and in a style that we have never seen before in live action. May using the Force with the daggers is so cool and it reminds me of Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. The hand-to-hand combat is also great and is a huge step up from the underwhelming combat from the Ahsoka show. Like, we're finally getting good choreography, guys. This is something to be excited about. May is fighting a massive uphill battle against Master Indara and only wins by launching a dagger at the innocent bartender, forcing Indara to save him and allowing May to strike her in the heart with the dagger. I'm just happy that Master Indara wasn't able to walk off that one like a lot of Star Wars characters have recently. Honestly, at this rate, if that was a lightsaber and not a dagger, she probably would have been fine. It is nice to have actual stakes in the show though and have a main character actually die. It is so great to see Neimoidians again in live action. Like, I think literally the last time we saw Neimoidians in live action was Revenge of the Sith, which is kind of crazy, so it's been a while. It's really nice to see them again. But I did notice that they took away their stereotypical Japanese accent, which I kind of did like a lot, and I wish they used it in this show. I don't really see the problem with it, and you know, it is stereotypical, but honestly, that's what made Neimoidians kind of special was that accent, so it was just kind of an interesting move. I don't necessarily have a problem with the new voice, but it feels a little weird hearing it because I'm so used to their Japanese accents. I've seen so much criticism for this show, but one of them I can specifically recall is the one about the little tiny explosion that happened in space in a Neimoidian ship, and I just want to call BS on that because explosions in space have always happened throughout Star Wars. Star Wars has never abided by the laws of physics, so I don't know why all of a sudden it needed to apply here. On a more positive note, Coruscant looks so much more lively in this show, which I assume symbolizes a time of prosperity for the Jedi. It is cool to take this view of Coruscant and compare it with how it looks during the Republic, Empire, and New Republic. Back on the Neimoidian cruiser, Osha is questioned by two Jedi, one being her old friend before she left the Jedi Order, and the other being a Zygerian Jedi, a species that we have never seen as Jedi. This is interesting because Zygerians have a long history of hating the Jedi, which makes me wonder how the Jedi managed to take her from her Zygerian family. Osha is seen as guilty and she is sent to Coruscant to be dealt with. On the prisoner transport, we see a new type of parasite in this show that subdues violent criminals, and it kinda reminds me of that parasite from the movie Alien. I'm pretty sure we also see the same species as that shark dude from that one Clone Wars episode. Osha crash lands and she has a vision of her thought to be deceased twin sister, May, revealing Osha's innocence, but now she's gotta prove it to the Jedi. The Jedi find out that Osha crash landed on a planet called Karlak, which is the same planet where Death Watch's camp is located in the Clone Wars show and where they burned down that whole village to the ground. We see that Sol seems to be the only one who trusts Osha, and he reassures his fellow Jedi that she is not a threat. Lastly, we see May meet with a mysterious Sith who ignites his lightsaber as the episode ends. Episode 2 begins with May infiltrating the Jedi Temple on the newly introduced planet, Olega. She pays this kid to distract the gatekeeper droid that gives similarities to the one at Jabba's palace. She throws a disc onto it that disabled it and she sneaks into the temple, finding this Jedi who she wants to kill named Torben. May is unable to kill him because he had taken the Barash vow, which is basically forced exile to atone for something he had done in the past. It seems like he has some kind of force field around him, similar to the one Grogu had while he was meditating on Tython. May returned to his quarters with Boonta poison, and Torben awoke from his vow, agreeing to drink the poison in hopes to gain forgiveness from May. This begs the question of what terrible thing did Torben do that was so bad that suicide is an acceptable outcome for him? For some reason, May doesn't take that vial that Torben drinks and leaves it behind for Osha to find laying next to his corpse. The Jedi are able to determine that Torben did kill himself, and Osha points out that the poison is Bunta from her home planet Brendok, meaning that it was in fact her sister who gave Torben the poison. The Jedi confirms these beliefs when they question the dealer of May's Bunta poison. Sol decides to confront May in the town, and they start duking it out. Sol outclasses May in this fight and doesn't bother using his lightsaber because he doesn't intend to kill her. Also, does he use force speed right here in the scene? How does he move so quickly like this? Speaking of Sol, I think he's proving to be my favorite character in this show with his amazing acting by Lee Jung-jae and his rationale. He kinda reminds me of Qui-Gon Jinn, honestly. Once the other Jedi step in and corner her, May pulls out a big brain move and blinds all the Jedi by using the Force on the sand and flees out of the scene. Osha finds May stealing a speeder from some dude, and May sees her, realizing that her long-lost twin sister is actually alive and the Jedi were right. This is interesting because they both think each other is dead until the end of this episode. Osha then attempts to stun her and has worse aim than most stormtroopers, and May is able to get away. May finds out from her dealer friend that her next target, Kelnaka, a Wookiee Jedi, has been discovered on the planet Kofar, another new planet. The last bit of this episode shows two people stumbling across Kelnaka's hideout, and then he appears and scares them off. It is cool seeing a Wookiee Jedi in live action, and Kelnaka is played by the same guy who plays Chewbacca, Jonas Suotamo. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. Episode 3 has definitely been the most controversial episode for most Star Wars fans online so far in this show. It takes place 16 years earlier on the planet Brendok, another new planet. I'm loving the originality in this show. We see the relationship the two twins have, and it seems like it's a bittersweet one. I understand that type of bittersweet relationship, having siblings myself. Siblings definitely get pretty annoying from time to time, and there are always those occasional arguments and fights. So May and Osha's relationship definitely makes sense. Except for the whole part where, May tries to kill her later in this episode, which doesn't make sense, but I'll get to that more in a minute. We see that they are a part of a Force Coven, kinda like the Night Sisters, but a little different. The Sisters' whole training revolves around the power of one, two, and many, which also seems to be the motto of these witches. Basically, May and Osha are being trained to fight together, which is why their parents encourage them to get along and stick together. The dilemma is that Osha doesn't want to stay on Brendok and be a witch, but rather explore the galaxy, and the Jedi arriving on Brendok is the perfect way out for her. The twins have to go through some weird ritual where they get their mark on their foreheads, but only May gets her mark after the ritual is interrupted by the Jedi. The Jedi have been spying on these witches for a period of time, so they know they have Force-sensitive twins. The witches allow the Jedi to test the twins, and they are told to lie in the tests. However, Osha still tells the truth because she wants to become a Jedi. Osha's mother seems to be the most understanding about her choice to become a Jedi. Osha goes to her quarters to get her stuff together in preparation to depart with the Jedi, and May enters the room, frustrated. She then tells Osha that she'll kill her and locks Osha in her room, starting a fire in an attempt to kill her. This part just doesn't make sense to me because they are siblings. No matter how annoying they get, actually trying to kill your sibling for simply disagreeing with them seems like straight psychopath behavior. Honestly, if anything, these two twins best represent the Star Wars fandom right now, with how everyone has been going at each other's throats because they share different opinions. From the perspective of this episode, it appears that the fire May started destroyed the entire place, showing the place all on fire and the reactor blowing up. Osha then runs into May, and May tells her that their mother is dead. As the platform starts collapsing, you can tell they don't want either to fall to their death, which brings back the question of why May tries to kill Osha in the first place. Sol then appears and saves Osha, and May presumably falls to her death, but we know she lives. We then see that all the witches have died, probably from the big explosion. I think there is more to this than what the show is telling us here though. On the Jedi cruiser, May wakes up to Sol trying to comfort her, and in the background we see Torben, who is absolutely scarred up, which was not how we saw him earlier in this episode, which means something went down that the episode isn't telling us. I think the Jedi were definitely up to something and were probably behind the explosion and the deaths of all the witches. We hear Osha's mother tell her earlier in the episode that
this isn't about good or bad. This is about power and who is allowed to use it.
I don't think Jedi would ever kill people like that unless they were fighting to defend themselves. So what I think happened was several things, and this is just my theory. I think the witches decided to attack the Jedi so they could keep the twins, while, on the other hand, maybe that Sith we saw at the end of episode 1 took some part in convincing May to kill Osha and destroy the place. But Torben did have to atone for something he did to May, so maybe he did do something incredibly messed up for a Jedi and had some role in destroying the place. Maybe the Jedi were ordered to destroy the place out of the possibility that they may soon become a threat because they found out how to create life. That's not just something that happens every day. It is worth noting that Sol blames the destruction of the place on May, which means that either he's lying to Osha and they did it, or he's telling the truth. There are definitely a lot of possibilities for what happened here, but these were my best two theories. There are some questions that arise from this episode, like how are the witches able to create life? I thought that creation of life through the Force was unique to Anakin, yet these twins get that special treatment as well. Does that mean they are just as special, or is this just an isolated incident? And regarding the outrage about how this affects Anakin's birth, I don't think it does that much. I feel like the creation of life through the Force is an interesting concept, and in this instance doesn't really hurt Anakin's birth that badly, for me at least. Sure, it makes it a bit less special, but maybe these twins really are special. If the Force itself is going to create people, they better be some special people, I'll say that. Maybe that's why the witches wanted the twins to stay together, because of how powerful they could be when fully trained together. Altogether, I've enjoyed these 3 episodes of The Acolyte a lot. I love where the plot is going and how it is keeping me invested in the show. I think it has a lot to do with the surplus of original characters and planets and the fact that this is the first time that we are seeing something before the prequel trilogy. Everything in the show is so fresh, and it is nice to have another show like Andor that doesn't rely on cameos to be interesting. I appreciate how great the costume design is for all of these characters, especially some of the alien Jedi like Jackie Lon, the Zygerian Jedi, Tassi Loa, and Kelnaka. The aliens in general in the show look amazing, and it really immerses me into each episode and sets the environment so well. They even throw in some prequel melodies here and there within the show, which is a nice touch to jingle the car keys in the faces of the fans so we can be like, I recognize that. The planets in these 3 episodes have been great as well, taking place on 6 whole planets, each with a unique setting. So despite all the hate this show has been receiving so far, I really do have to disagree with it because I am thoroughly enjoying so many aspects of it, especially the great plot. I don't think this show is shoving politics down people's throats or anything of the sort. I don't think what race a person in a show is or who they love is relevant to a good story, and that is exactly what this show is proving so far. I'm going to give this show a rating of a whopping 8.5 out of 10 so far, and hopefully it'll be a higher rating when I make a video on the final half of the show. I know a lot of y'all have your own opinions that you would like to share in the comments down below, and all I ask is to keep them civil and respectful of others' opinions. At the end of the day, we are all Star Wars fans and humans, so we should treat each other as such. I hope you have all enjoyed this video, and this is Narfboy saying bye. Bye!